Well, it has been one of the busiest days in the world of sports since this whole pandemic thing came around. So we're going to break it all down today, joined by a few familiar faces, Kurt Larson and Oliver Platt. My name is Adam Jenkins, and I'm glad everyone got the memo about the collared shirt today. We're sprucing it up as we gear a little bit closer to a resume to normalcy. Kurt, how are things going?
Good. I guess you guys can't see the baby throw up I have on me right here, but it's kind of
Oh,
blended in well,
nice.
so it's okay. Well, I'm not going to waste two shirts today, Oliver Platt. Come on.
Well, let's hope none of our viewers are enjoying the show over lunch today after that.
Yeah, what a way to start the show. My goodness. Ollie, you hanging in there, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good. It feels like we're edging closer to seeing some soccer in multiple countries. So yeah, I'm okay.
Kurt, I know one of your favorite pastimes over the pandemic, and I guess just in general, is being active on Twitter, whether it's sharing your meals, your beer, or engaging in healthy dialogue or fun dialogue with fans. You've been pretty active with the fans lately. What's your temperature pulse on CPL fans and football fans in general right now?
Well, first of all, I think people are looking for some bit of escape from the pandemic, and sports usually offers that kind of escape. So I think there's a lot of attention on what's going on around every league right now. The NBA, Major League Soccer, obviously announcing today that they are coming back, and the CPL and all the things going on with the proposed CPL Players Union and a little bit of news sprinkling out there, which we'll talk about later. And then the news on what the CPL could potentially be doing later this summer. So like you said off the top, there's a lot of questions to address on social media. Sometimes people don't like those answers, as you know, but they're the right answers.
Well, let's dive in and try and get some more of those right answers out to the public. One of the biggest pieces of news today came from one club in particular, York9, announcing Ryan Telfer will be rejoining the Nine Stripes this season, quoting him as saying he's got some unfinished business to take care of. Ollie, I know you've had a chance to speak to Angus McNabb about some of the goings-ons and the behind the scenes of the negotiations with Ryan and getting him back to the club. So how did this deal come about?
Yeah, so York9 wanted to keep Ryan Telfer at the end of last season. They wanted to re-sign him when he obviously left Toronto FC, but he decided to try his hand in Europe, and the move to Cyprus was kind of seen as a bit of a bridge deal for him, as players who have gone there before and then moved on maybe to a bigger league in a short period of time after they've shown what they can do. But that obviously all got kind of thrown up in chaos by the pandemic, and the Cyprus League actually cancelled and just completely voided its season, decided not to try to come back. So York9, I think, were in a position with their squad where they're pretty happy with what they've got. They're deep in midfield. They've got a lot of new forwards. Even at centre-back, I think some people have said they could use another body, but they think that Arnoni and Gasparotto can eat a lot of minutes there. So they were really in a situation where they're looking for the best player available in terms of who they wanted to add. You know, it didn't really matter what position. They just wanted to add an impact player. And so obviously they've kept in touch with Telfer and his agent, and the opportunity kind of came up for him to come back. So it's a big move for them. You know, at this point in the off season, certainly, I don't think we expected a player of that profile to be signed. And yeah, it should be a big difference maker for Y9 if and when we get the season restarted.
Player of that profile. You and I agree on this, Oliver, but for some reason, it seems like clubs around North America haven't been willing to take the opportunity to sign this guy. I'm still confused by that. Just to add on to your conversation with Angus McNabb, if I'm other GMs, other coaches around the CPL right now, I'm starting to get worried when I look at York9's roster and the players they continue to add, and basically just the entire setup they have there structurally. And what's even more scary is if you talk to the group at York9 and you ask them, how are you guys able to fit all of these players under the salary cap, keep them happy? They'll tell you they have more salary cap room to spend. They'll tell you they have more room to bring in players, which is unbelievable to me. And if I'm, another CPL club right now, I'm wondering what my chances are of competing when things get going later this year.
We're going to talk a little bit about power rankings in a bit and do a A CPL draft of sorts. We'll explain the rules on that later, but Kurt sort of alluded to it now. York's looking more and more dangerous by the moves. I'm not sure where you had them heading into the start of the season when we thought we were only a couple of weeks away with all the things we've seen that Estevez gets sold, a little bit of money comes in for York9. But where do you see them right now, and what does this signing really mean for them on the pitch this season?
Well, I think you'd have to say that there's a top three in the league right now, and it's the two teams that were dominant last year, and it's York9. There's other teams that I think have added very well and done a good job. I'd include Pacific and Edmonton and Halifax, and Valor had a very difficult point to start from, but I think they've done a decent job since then as well. But certainly, I think there's a top three emerging, and I would be surprised if. It's, maybe not surprised because, as I say, Pacific do have a lot of talent, but it's going to be difficult for other teams to break their way into that top three. The question is obviously Cavalry are bringing a lot of players back. Forge are bringing a lot of players back, and I think we'll add more as well. How quickly can this York9 team settle and really gel, particularly when you look at the fact that they've, particularly up front and on the wings, they basically overhauled the entire roster. So that is the question for me, and it becomes a more pertinent one if we're looking at a very abridged format with a short preseason and not as many games as we were expecting.
Cavalry and Forge, correct me if I'm missing somebody, but Cavalry and Forge were the two best teams last year. But for me, they've also lost key contributors from those teams, and it's still to be determined if they've been able to replace those difference makers, Dominic Malonga, Joel Waterman, these guys. York9, am I out of line to say that York9 might have the best roster in the league right now when you consider who they've added in the offseason, where they've bolstered, guys like Maury Donor and Abzi coming into their second season after having breakout first professional seasons? Have they been able to obtain the two best wingers from last season, Oliver Platt, Ryan Telfer, and Michael Petrasso? I mean, is there an argument now that we've kind of been walking along, things have been trickling out, but can we now say that York9, top to bottom, has the best roster in the league?
Yeah, you could on paper. And I think, when you look at the players that they've lost, they brought Telfer back now. Okay, Gatas was a good player for them, but I think
you don't even like Gatas.
Well, yeah, I wasn't going to mention that, but yeah,
I'll mention it for you.
But Michael Petrasso, even if you like him or not, if you like Gatas or not, more than makes up for that loss, right? And Estevez was a player who was very talented, but wasn't really in their starting 11 very often. So they haven't lost a lot of players from last season's team, which did finish third, and they've added a lot of quality. So yes, on paper, you can absolutely make that argument. Again, the question is how quickly will it come together?
I'm going to give a shout. I'm going to give a shout out to Cavs a little bit later, but they do have a few exciting international signings. I'm just not willing to say they've panned out, but on paper, they also look very good. But yeah. I know what York9 has now. I don't know what these international signings are going to be for some of the other teams in the league.
This brings me to a question that I want to ask you, and I think it's a topic for another day where we can go more in depth, but just a quick word. I'm wondering, part of the success that we attributed so much to Fortune Cavalry last year were their academies that had existed before the CPL with Sigma and Foothills. York9 didn't have that. So I'm wondering how much of a difference did that first year make for Jimmy Brennan to get his core together, build the foundation, start to implement a culture and identity, and now coming into year two, how much closer are we to a level playing field in terms of experience with these clubs? I'll give you the first chance to react to that.
Yeah, well, that was always the case, I think, that Jimmy kind of made was, when we were giving him some criticism about the system that he was trying to implement and the style of play, which was quite complex. I think he knew it probably would be. And in the first half of the season, it took them a while to win a game and they weren't scoring many goals. He probably knew that it would be difficult. It did start to look a lot better in the second half of the season. They still had a few bad days, really bad days, but they had a lot of impressive results as well. And when you look at the full season table, it ended up looking pretty decent for them. So I certainly think the hope there will be that they laid the groundwork last year. They've brought most of that spine back. The players know the system and the style of play. And then they've been able to add some real kind of difference makers at the top end of the pitch, which was probably what they lacked.
Yeah, I think I would just add on to that I think you're going to see almost every team, not all of them, but almost every team take a step up this year for that exact same reason. The coaches know what to expect now. They've seen the players' ability and been able to get rid of guys that didn't perform in season one. And I think, at least where Pacific FC and Halifax are sitting, replace those guys with sure upgrades. So I think having that year under your belt, maybe that year that Cavalry and Forge were able to kind of bypass, if you will, is going to help a lot of different teams in this league.
So one final note on Ryan Telfer before we move on. Don't think it's a stretch to say that he and Marco Bustos, the two biggest signings of the offseason, for Marco to go from Valor over to Pacific. But I ask you, which is the biggest signing between the two, and who would you rather have on your team? Kurt?
It's interesting, right? Because we had, Pacific FC leadership on here a few weeks ago telling us that Marco Bustos was the best attacking player in the league. I don't think they could say that with a straight face now if they came on our show. Because I think if you offer anybody in this league outside of Pacific FC, Ryan Telfer or Marco Bustos, I think they're going to take Ryan Telfer just because he's done it at a different level. He's performed in the Canadian Championship. He's scored in Major League Soccer. And he is an international, playing in World Cup qualifiers on the biggest stage. I think you have to take Ryan Telfer.
Yeah, I think in terms of what's the bigger deal, I would say Telfer is, because I think it was always kind of expected that Bustos would stay in the CPL for another year. Obviously, maybe changing club, which he has done. But Telfer, yeah, obviously he went to Europe. I think there was MLS interest in him as well. And so for him to come back to the CPL for another year, nothing against Marco at all, but I'd say that's probably the bigger deal. As for which one I'd rather have in my team, so it's a toss-up. I'll give it to Telfer because I think that he's a bit more. You can use him in different ways, right? And he's very versatile.
Still waiting for somebody to explain to me why Ryan Telfer has not had a good run. Even at TFC, MLS interest, there was some there. I had heard Minnesota United, but why is this guy not being given opportunities? I don't know.
He always played well for TFC, I thought, in limited opportunities. But yeah, it's York9's game.
Expanding the Bustos and Telfer conversation just a little bit. How does this signing, now that Ryan is back in the CPL for 2020, change your Golden Boot predictions? Where would you put Ryan, and who do you think is the front runner right now? Ollie, first word to you.
It's tough to predict because we've got so many attacking players that we just haven't seen. In terms of the international players, the one I've said a couple of times that if I had to put money on it right now, a guy that I know what he can do, and I think he will score lots of goals again, is Easton Ongaro. He would be my safe pick if I was putting my own money on it.
I can't agree. It's first of all, the conversation is strange because we're talking about a very condensed season. So what does a Golden Boot even mean, right? Yeah. What does it mean? Scoring 5 goals? I don't know. What I would say is if this was a normal season, 28 games, if you will, I don't see a 15-goal scorer in the CPL right now. I don't see somebody who really sticks out as this is the guy who is going to get you, a goal every other game, a consistent scorer. We didn't see that last year, really. So if I was to pick somebody, I would pick one of the new international additions. I'm looking at maybe even Cordova at Cavalry, if he can settle in there. There's guys I think that CPL teams have brought in to play up front internationally that I would go with.
There are a lot of question marks. Like Ongaro's only done it for half a season. Taran Campbell, kind of the same thing, and he's going to have to share minutes maybe with Diaz. Anthony Novak was injured a lot last year, but he could be up there as well. And then you have a team like York9 where they do have a couple of options at centre forward, but there might be a situation where they want to get Petrasso and Vasconcelos, who they're very excited about, and Telfer all on the pitch, and they don't actually play with an orthodox striker. So it's really difficult to predict the Golden Boot race.
I'm never taking a player from Forge because the rotation is right. They just rotate too often. You don't know who Bobby Smirniotis' top 3 guys are because they're pretty deep, right? So that's a good thing, but in terms of picking a Golden Boot, it's very difficult.
All right, with all that talk of depth throughout the CPL, it's time for one of our favorite recurring segments throughout these Hangouts, and that is the Kurt Larson, Oliver Platt Pundit Draft. Today, what's going to make it a little bit special, and because we've seen a bit of a recurring pattern for Kurt, I've changed the rules a little bit. So no longer will Kurt be filling his 7-a-side team with Cavalry and Forge players. The rules today are you can only take 1 player from each club. So we're doing a 7-a-side plus a goalkeeper, and the goalkeeper might make things a little bit complicated in certain areas. I'm excited for that. So those are the rules. 7 aside and a goalkeeper, only 1 player from each club. And in order to determine who gets the first draft pick, I've written down a number. Whoever comes closest to it goes first. Ollie, first guess at the number.
Any number?
What's the range?
Any number in the world?
All right, 1 to 10.
Okay. All right, I'll take 6.
6 for Ollie.
I'm going to live dangerously and take 7.
7. Wow. Well, Ollie wins it. It was 4.
Okay.
4 is the number.
I should have played the number, shouldn't I have, Ollie?
You probably should have. And I had the heads as the backup coin flip between the two of you. Okay,
Good.
Ollie, your first pick. You have free range of the entire Canadian Premier League. Where are you going to go?
I would have rather picked first in the game we're going to play later, so I think I've just lost out there. I also want to say...
It's a professional tease, Ollie.
Yeah, I also want to say before we start this that I think I might have overthought this, and I'm not sure how it's going to go.
No excuses before we even start picking. Give us your pick, Ollie Platt.
Okay. First pick, I'm going to take Michael Petrasso.
Wow, okay.
Hope he stays healthy. I'm taking, with my first overall pick, James Pantemis from Valor.
All right.
Interesting strategy for Kurt Larson. Okay.
Get my Valor pick out of the way.
Ollie, pick number 2.
Okay, so how do I want to... Okay, second pick.
I think Kurt just threw a curveball in Ollie's.
Well, there's a strategy to this, right? Because you got to think about who you want to pick last. Okay, I'm going to take Terran Campbell.
Don't you just have like your draft picks written down like in order here? All right.
I do, yeah. But you have to think about who you're going to pick, who you're going to leave till later.
Yep. Okay. With my second pick, I'm going to take Ryan Telfer.
Newsy. On topic. I like it. Okay, so it's Michael Petrasso and Terran Campbell for Ollie, James Pantemis, and Ryan Telfer for Kurt. Ollie, you're back on the clock.
Also, once we put Telfer as the 11th best player in CPL last year. Did you see that?
We did. That's a longer conversation for another day. Ollie, pick number 3.
Okay. I'm going to take a little bit of a... no, actually, I know who I'm going to take it. I'm going to take Amir Didic.
Ooh, okay. That takes one of my center backs off the board. But it's okay because just to solve that problem, I'm going to go with Mele Tanguia as my replacement for Didic and get my FC Edmonton pick off the board as well.
Okay.
No Forge or Cavalry players yet. I think I know what your strategy is going to be heading down the wire here. Ollie, pick number 7 overall, 4th for you.
I'm going to take Francisco Acuna from Atletico Ottawa.
Okay.
Mr. Larson?
Hope you've done your research on him.
He was in Liga MX last year, Kurt.
I know. Well, he's aging a bit. How old is he now?
Aren't we all? Like 32.
Okay. I'm gonna start it. I'm gonna keep it. Stay at the back. I'm gonna go with Thomas Merjaguer at the back. He's gonna be in my center back, in the middle of the back 3.
Okay, midway through the draft. Recap: Ollie, Michael Petrasso, Terran Campbell, Amir Didic, Francisco Acuna, Kurt Larson, James Pantemis, Ryan Telfer, Mele Tanguia, and Thomas Merjaguer. Oliver Platt, please start the bottom half of the draft.
So I think my team is essentially picked here. So I will take Andre Rampersad.
Andre Rampersad, okay. Added to the board.
I can take my Halifax player now. Don't need to, though. Daniel Crutzen is my left-sided, more defensive player, but he's my left-sided player.
I was hoping you wouldn't do that. All right.
So I have a back 3 right now of Tim Guia, Merjaguer, and Crutzen. Not bad.
I'm going to take, in that case, David Edgar.
David Edgar off.
We've just left Kyle Becker on the board.
Yeah, we have. But I'm taking I'm also taking a flyer on my next player. So My number 10, my central player, my attacking player, even though he could play on a wing for Cavalry, I'm going with Richard Luca, who actually could be one of the breakout players in the CPL this year.
Okay. So I have a Valor player and a Cavalry player left. So
That's correct.
Valor player will be Arnold Bukamutu, and I know I'm going to get criticism on social media for that one.
We're gonna explain these teams when we're done, just so everyone can feel a little bit more comfortable. But okay, there you go.
I'm going with more up and coming international signings. I'm going with Alex Marshall in an attacking role for me from Halifax. Okay. As long as he gets here. As long as he's still not in the country yet. So as long as he gets here.
Yeah.
All right, Ollie, last pick. Make it count.
That leaves me with a Cavalry player and a goalkeeper to pick. So you can probably put 2 and 2 together there. Marco Carducci.
Marco Carducci.
Well, why
see him go last in the draft?
Why use that? I don't understand that strategy of like, yes, Marco Carducci was the best goalkeeper in the league last season, but why that strategy of having your goalkeeper be one of your best players?
Because I think he was the best keeper in the league by a fair margin, and I think there is less of a difference between other players, and I can pick in other positions and their Cavalry alternatives.
Yeah. So my striker, and Ben Fisk gave me a lot of trouble last time he was on for only picking Cavalry and Fours players for my best 11.
So are you going to snub him or are you going to include him?
I'm going with Ben Fisk as my striker.
Okay.
Striker. Okay.
All right.
Striker was tough. That's why I took Campbell early.
That concludes the draft. You two have a chance to think about your teams for a second. Give us a quick word, and then we'll move on with the rest of the show. So, Oliver, Team Platt, Michael Petrasso, York9, Taryn Campbell, Pacific, Amir Didic, Edmonton, Francisco Acuna, Ottawa, Andre Rampersad, Halifax, David Edgar, Ford, Bukamuda out of Valor, and Marco Carducci out of Cavalry. Team Larson, James Pantemis out of Valor, Ryan Telfer, Meli Temguia, Thomas Mayer-Jaguar, Daniel Crutzen, Richard Luca, Alex Marshall, and Ben Fisk. Both of you, pick a captain and explain your team in 30 seconds or less. Ollie first.
So I've gone with kind of I guess you could call it a 2-4-1 formation with Didic and Edgar at the back, Petrasso and Bukamutu on the wings as kind of wing backs, Rampersad and Acuna in the middle, and then Campbell up front. Now, with hindsight, I probably would have taken Carl Becker instead of Rampersad and put Scharler at the back instead of David Edgar. But, you have to think on the fly in these things, and I did not do that. So I'm happy with my team as it is anyway.
Okay, well, I'm going to
immediate buyer's regret.
I'm going to name Ben Fisk my captain, just so he's the most likable guy in the CPL.
Captain. David Edgar's my
captain. I basically put this team together by picking guys that I think are going to be in the top 20 of the league, and guys who are absolutely in the top 2 to 3 of their position. That's all I did.
Fair enough. Okay, now that we got the fun stuff out of the way, we're going to get to some hard-hitting and important questions before we finish off the show with one little more fun game. But it's an important conversation that we want to have. And Kurt, obviously, every CPL fan, the biggest thing on their mind is, when are we getting back to action? What are some of the ramifications of what that tournament or resume to play is going to look like, and how the players are experiencing it and what their thoughts are? So we've given you a chance to do a little bit of brainstorming, some research, speak to the players you're able to get a hold of, and we'll get your opinions now. So question number 1 for you, Kurt, and this is stemming from a lot of conversation on social media, but there's some players that the process hasn't entirely been amicable between league and between the players. So what have you been hearing, Kurt?
Well, as we saw earlier this week, there were quite a bit more. There's some reporting done on what the league is offering its players and what the players are maybe unhappy with, and kind of how that dialogue has been. I've reached out to the group, kind of mobilizing the players to maybe speak with one voice a little bit more. What I would say is in recent days, within the last 48 hours, the league and players have been talking more about collaborating on what makes sense to come back and play this tournament. But the players still have their concerns, and some of those concerns were put forward through Dwayne Rollins on Twitter earlier this week. I can say their top 3 concerns maybe at the moment are similar to what we've seen in Major League Soccer and in other leagues. It's no surprise that the players don't really agree with the bonus system of maybe giving up a percentage of their pay, a further percentage of their pay to accumulate funds to award to a potential season winner. Funny enough, I was told that actually only one team agreed with that. I wonder why that is. Probably because they had the best opportunity to actually win the bonus. So no surprise there. And keep in mind, these are those ideas being thrown around, right? There's nothing being put to the players and saying, this is it, you're taking it. These are all ideas at the moment. The other one was, health and safety protocols. There is a bit of concern there, and players want to know, what exactly is the protocol for, let's say a player does get sick or does test positive. What happens to that player? What happens to this league? I think all those will be put into place because the league can't go anywhere unless it has support of the provinces and the local jurisdictions and how it's handling that situation. So I expect all that to get ironed out. And the other one was just being away from family for a significant amount of time and what that does and the kind of strain that puts on families back home. We saw that in Major League Soccer. I think everybody's concerned with being away from their family for an extended period, but I don't think that's going to prevent anything from happening. When we've seen, the most recent reports are that this is, not a 2-month process, but more of a 4 to 6 weeks process.
Right. One of the bigger sticking points as well was the conversation that initially there were reports that all players were mandated to take a 25% pay deferral, which insinuated that the pay would come later on. And as this pandemic has continued and the stoppage has been extended, that deferral has reportedly been turned into a cut. And some people are obviously not happy about that. No one likes to lose money, but it just seems like sort of a repercussion of the business right now. What further light can you shed on that, Kurt?
What I've been told is we all saw that the players, along with front office staff and league staff, took a 25% wage deferral at the start of this pandemic back 3 months ago when all of this started. What I've been told is that was still assuming that there would be a season where games were being played in front of home supporters, at which case that deferral would be made whole. As we know, we've progressed now, and we know that games will almost certainly not be played in home stadiums in front of fans, which then turned that deferral into a 25% pay cut. Obviously, nobody's happy with that, but I think that overall, what I'm hearing is the players understand it, and it's not going to prevent anything from taking place, any kind of competition from taking place, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think it seems like over the past day or so, there's been a bit more outreach from the league to the players, right? And I think that's all that needs to happen to me is just a bit more communication between both sides. Because it feels like a lot of information got put out there that wasn't finalized, or maybe it just lacked context, like some of the health and safety concerns. And now it feels like maybe, if we can get both sides talking to each other a little bit more, you can kind of fill in the blanks there, and everyone's a bit more comfortable with the situation. So I'm hoping that now that process has started, we'll have less kind of concern on both sides about what this might look like.
We discussed Friday the idea and the emerging idea that Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, was in the running to host this tournament. Kurt, since Friday, what details or what direction have these talks gone towards in terms of where we might be playing, when it might be played, and the format itself?
I think we saw it was a CBC report from Prince Edward Island talking about the communication between everyone, all the parties involved. And of course, in Vancouver Island, we've seen multiple reports out there that the city of Langford is very interested in potentially hosting the CPL. I'm actually hearing that there might be another jurisdiction or two in the running as well. What's been stressed to me is, there's still a long way to go in the process. There's still a lot of work to be done. It's an immense undertaking. It's a risky undertaking. And as I tweeted out yesterday, I mean, this is an expensive venture, right? This is a $5.5 million spend to bring all these teams together and, make everything work and make everything work financially. So there's still a ways to go. I'd expect something, by mid-June if it's going to happen, and we'll see where we're at.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep our eyes on the situation. Just quickly, a single reaction from each of you on Major League Soccer and the Players Association ratifying their CBA, which means the plan for Orlando can go ahead. Ollie, your first takeaway from the news.
It's good news, obviously. I've been kind of interested to see the format that MLS seems to be taking, which is, they're holding out that they can kind of complete more of a regular season after this tournament. So I think a few games are going to count towards the regular season. Then there'll be some kind of knockout format, which just stands on its own. And then they'll return to regular season play, which it sounds a little convoluted to me. And obviously it'll be interesting to see what that actually looks like. I personally kind of see the CPL's approach as maybe a bit clearer and a bit more sensible right now, that we're just going to play the season in one kind of go, and everyone kind of understands what's at stake there, right? But yeah, it's good to see at least they'll be getting back on the field in some way.
Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to the Wide World of Sports complex down there. I believe that's where they're playing, right, Oliver?
Yeah, ESPN's Wide World of Sports.
It's an interesting complex, a very nice complex. I'm interested to see how these games look on TV. I mean, there isn't unless it's been built in the last few years, a big stadium to play in, if what you'd consider to be a stadium at all. So I'm interested to see how this looks, and just really the flow of these games. I mean, you have teams that haven't trained together for how long now, players who haven't trained consistently or played consistently. And then they don't like it or not, it's just very awkward for a player to step into a situation that isn't, a BMO Field or a Yankee Stadium or a Red Bull Arena, where they're surrounded by fans and surrounded by the infrastructure they're used to. It's going to be really interesting to see how these players cope with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it won't be at ESPN's Wide World of Sports, but all signs are pointing to the CPL doing a single site tournament as well. So now that we're in extra time today on the Hangout, we have one final draft to do. And here's how this draft is going to work. We are going to have Kurt and Ollie pick 4 teams each in a draft style order, and the teams they think will accumulate the most points over the tournament that will be played. So staying with the structure, 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, no points for a loss. So your 4 teams that you think will get you the most points out of this single site tournament. Ollie went first in the player draft, so Kurt gets to go first in the team draft.
Just to clarify the rules here, I mean, what are we talking about? The season or the playoff portion of whatever's going to happen?
Well, if your team that you pick makes the playoffs and they get a win, that's 3 more points.
Oh, okay.
So it's just combined points overall out of the 4 teams you each get to pick.
Okay. Well, we've been talking about York9 a lot this show, but I'm not picking them first overall. I am picking Cavalry FC first overall. It's going to come as a surprise to a lot of people, but
no Cavs hat on today either. Ollie?
So I'd just like to clarify here. Do I get 2 picks now?
No.
Surely this has got to be a snake format, has it not?
No.
What?
Don't throw this in now. You had all morning and a couple pre-production meetings to raise this concern. Don't do this to me now.
Surely Kurt should get team 1 and team 4 here, and I get 2 and 3.
Producer Kyle has about 7 seconds to override me, but I'm going to say no, that we stick to the original format.
This is a farce then.
No snake draft. No snake draft.
No snake draft. Ridiculous. Okay, I had Forge as my number 1 team, so I'll take them second. And in this contest, I will surely lose because of the format that has been decided.
Okay.
Have some faith in the sleeper teams, Ollie.
I am taking York9 now.
Okay, that's the big 3 that we discussed earlier off the board. This is where things are a little bit more up in the air. Ollie.
I have Pacific at number 4.
I had Pacific at number 4 as well. So I'm going to take my number 5, which was HFX Wanderers.
Oh, does this help you or hurt you in terms of your strategy?
It helps me. I do think Halifax have done a good job, but they have done a good job basically from scratch. So how quickly that will gel, I don't know. And so my number 5 team that I'll take with the 6th pick now is FC Edmonton.
I knew it. I don't know why you're so high on them.
Kurt Larson, the newcomers or last season's basement dwellers, Ottawa or Valor? Who are you putting all of your hopes and dreams on? Did he freeze or is he deep in thought?
Oh no!
Oh, he's back. Okay, thank goodness.
Sorry, where did I leave off?
We didn't get your pick.
I feel like Valor fans, they don't understand me, and they don't understand some of the opinions on OneSoccer sometimes. So they're not going to take this well. I'm going with the new boys, Ottawa, as my fourth team.
All right. Ollie, who do you want to pick with the only team remaining?
Well, clearly it'll be
would
Valor.
would you have taken in the same order as Kurt? Do you agree 7-8?
No, I do not. And I've got my list here that I'll screenshot as proof for anyone who wants it. I did have Valor 7th ranked. So yeah, they would have been my fourth pick either way.
See, everything works out in the end. Snake draft or normal rules, it all works out. Okay,
I don't know why we can't get anybody from Valor to come on the show. I just can't put my finger on it.
To wrap it up, Kurt's fantasy pick 4, Cavalry, York9, Halifax, Ottawa, Ollie's Forge, Pacific, FC Edmonton, and Valor. And just so you know, they each agreed to put $250 on this prediction for both their players and for their team. So make sure you hold them to account for that. That's going to be all the time we have for today. Thanks for sticking with us in the extra time tonight. OneSoccer Happy Hour is back tonight with Aaron McLeod. So be sure to join Andy, Carm, and Laura at 5 p.m. Eastern. For producer Kyle, producer Armin, Kurt Larson, and Oliver Platt, I'm Adam Jenkins. Thank you so much for tuning in. Subscribe to this channel if you somehow haven't already. Give the video a like and share it with a friend, and we will talk to you tomorrow.